of the state, friend of the people, Mr. Wasalu Jaco, aka Lupe Fiasco. Coming at a time where hip-hop was basically dominated by rappers chasing radio jingles and hyper-masculine hitters, the Chicago rhymesmith was a welcome breath of fresh air for rapidy rap heads to stand over. And his dare-to-be-different approach that he's carried pretty much throughout his entire career, he's become one of the most polarizing figures in the genre. If you're into bars and technical masterpieces, it's easy to understand why you love him. Consistently raising the bar through his socially conscious, educational material, his penchant for storytelling and creative writing, and his overall unwillingness to dumb his ideas down and instead challenge listeners to think beyond what's expected. On the flip, it's just as easy to see why some people absolutely hate him. Being labeled as corny, pretentious, and whiny for his different views on politics, society, and the rap game at large, to the point that it almost feels like he's teased retirement once every other year. But when you get past all the crap that doesn't really matter, you can't deny that Mr. Fiasco has shown us he's incredible above most at the pure art of rap, and with that, here's a ranking of Lupe Fiasco's albums from worst to first. Number 7, Lasers. Where to start? From the release of Lupe's second album to this one in 2011, he became one of the most popular cult rappers through his die-hard bass and a bit of internet folklore that we hadn't seen in hip-hop at the time. The rap community at large was pumped for it, and you could possibly make a case that this was Lupe at his most respected. Just sucks that the people at his label didn't get the memo because they stifled the release so much that fans were forced to create a petition in order to see it released. Honestly, the making of this project is so long and complicated that it would take an entire video to break down. So if you like that, please let me know in the comments and I got you. Now, this project is Lupe's first real attempt to make something completely mainstream, primarily due to the urging of Atlantic. And if it's one thing that's proved here is that you do not get in the way of Lupe Fiasco's creative process. A tiresome affair throughout with its incredibly poppy production and Disney Channel ass hooks that absolutely don't match with Lupe Fiasco's political tirade rhymes. His rhymes definitely take a hit as he forgoes his trademark storytelling and introspection for raps that really boil down to him complaining about the world on wax. I don't want to care right now, keep it. Out of my head, keep it. State-run radio? Oh my god, keep it. Everything not named all black everything, please, keep it. It's also hurt tremendously by its lack of any of his prior collaborators that helped make his first albums classics. No soundtrack, no Nicki Jean, no Gemstones, no Matthew Santos. They all are sorely missed. The most saddening aspect about all of this is the fact that this is his best-selling album in his entire catalog, which is... we loved him that much that we bought this album, damn it! How dare you, Lupe! A very mismatched record with almost no redeeming qualities, this is the first of many hits that he'd endured to unravel his credibility throughout his career. Number 6. Food and Liquor Part 2, The Great American Rap Album Part 1. Lord, that's a long title. After releasing his most successful single on his most successful album, and wading through the backlash he received from the hip-hop community, Lupe released his Friend of the People mixtape, which got even more hatred from his fans, mainly because it shares the exact same problems as his predecessor. So with a testy group of supporters ready to throw in the towel, Lupe tries to return back to the roots we loved and gives us a follow-up to Food and Liquor. This was originally meant to be his third and final album before his planned retirement. Welp, we can all blame contracts in Atlantic for pumping the brakes on that one. Man, we ain't never getting LUP in. At the first listen, you do hear a bit of an improvement over Lasers with a more structured layout and good records like Strange Fruition, Put 'Em Up, and How Dare You. While yes, it is better, it's still not better by much because it suffers from the same problems within Lasers and Friend of the People. Man, who the hell picked these beats? iTow, Lamborghini Angels, Heart Donor, Battle Scars. Please tell me how Battle Scars went platinum. It don't even matter. These songs are not it. To specify that this is the sequel to one of the best and most influential albums of the mid-2000s does a disservice to both projects. The former because FNL 2 pales in comparison on a major level, and the latter because now we have something to compare it to regardless of if it's really meant to be. Also, I really despise his insistence on switching up his lyricism. See, earlier in his career, Lupe had a great talent in expressing his differing perspectives on life in a way that was usually abstract from the norm, but not judgmental to people that couldn't understand. On this album, and the aforementioned Lasers, he totally says that and instead goes for directly criticizing people and society without ever giving a great deal of context. Everything is, the world is bad, Obama's a terrorist, drinking soda will make you stupid. Why are you so mad, Lupe? I think it's safe to say that the Great American Rap album was the point that many of his most loyal followers gave up on him as the savior of hip-hop. And regarding its visibility, he's never quite been the same. Side note, Bitch Bad is one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my entire life. Fight me, ho. Number 5, Drogas Light. After what felt like 10 long, miserable years being signed to Atlantic Records, a partnership that apparently was so toxic to the point of Lupe considering suicide, he's finally granted his release from the label and goes independent. First announcing his retirement before quickly retracting and promising the release of his first album as a part of a 3-album trilogy. Lupe, you gotta stop promising these triple albums, man. We look forward to it and you never deliver, and it really hurts. But with that in mind, fans expected a much more innovative follow-up to his already innovative, critically acclaimed 5th album. But instead, we're given Drogas Light. Hey, relax. I may be on my own with this one, but I seriously don't think that Drogas Light is as bad as people said it was when it first dropped. Yes, it is incredibly different from anything he dropped prior, even the Black Hole albums, which is saying a whole lot. But to me, it's refreshing because, well, it's nice to hear Lupe just have a little fun. Sometimes I feel like we as hip-hop listeners don't allow Lupe to just breathe, and it's almost like we expect him to always be conscious and quasi-militant. Like, why can't Lupe make a song about scrippers in peace? Songs like NGL, Made in the USA, Jump, Tranquilo, and Kill are smooth, fun songs with some mild messages, but not so much to beat you over the head. He and Ty Dolla $ign have a bit of an underrated chemistry, and I wonder how Lupe could have taken this sound if he didn't buckle to the heat that he got. Heat that is a little exaggerated, but not totally unwarranted. This album is not very cohesive, and the back end almost feels totally different from the front. Everything after Kill is right with a great deal of poppy EDM that frankly doesn't fit all together. Promise, Law, It's Not Designed, and Wild Child are not terrible, but I honestly think this record could be separated into 2 strong EPs and not a full-on album. But no matter what, Lupe gon' Lupe. So respect to an inconsistent but overall decent album. Number 4, Drogas Wave. A little bit over a year passed after the failure of Drogas Light, and Lupe distancing himself from it and blaming the label again. Stop the script real quick. How you gonna blame the label for Drogas Light when you weren't even signed? Why can't you just hold your nuts and admit that you like it when you made it? Fuck your fans, Lou. Do what you want and make your art for a change. Damn! Anyway, Lupe followed up Drogas Light with what he considers his first true independent album, Drogas Wave. This project might be the most expansive and creative in his entire discography. Technically, it's a 2-part album that differs greatly from one another. The first half tells the story of the Long Chains, a group of slaves that are overthrown on board while they're on their way to Africa, eventually going on a mission to free other slaves in bondage. Lupe does such a great job of making something that feels like you're listening to an epic storybook. It begins beautifully with In the Event of the Typhoon and Drogas, then gets incredibly thoughtful with Manila all the way to Wave Files, and ending on a bittersweet but hopeful energy from Down to Island Forever. All sequenced perfectly with no skips. Part 2 speaks largely on Lupe's career through songs like Imagine and the spiritual successor to Hip Hop Saved My Life, Stack That Cheese. Love that song. His struggles with manhood on EXO and King Nas, and the life he's lived as a Chicago resident on Happy Timbuktu Day, Cripple, and Janaya Forever. Though the two parts differ in specific subjects, they're both weaved together through the overall theme of freedom. Freedom to finally be the artist that he wants to be with no restraints. He does an incredible job in song structure, production, and using all of his strengths as a rapper. Though it is without a doubt a masterpiece, you can't ignore that this one is a greatly exhaustive piece of work. With a runtime of 1 hour and 38 minutes, it is very difficult to listen to this in one setting. Another negative is that while this album is definitely great together, it's not something with much replay value as individual songs. Either way, Drogas Wave is absolutely an incredible album that did much to make its core fan base happy. Number 3, Tatsu Owen Youth. I don't think that it would be a reach to say that a good chunk of Lupe's fan base dwindled after the critical failures that were Lasers and Food and Liquor 2. But with only one more album obligated to Atlantic, Lupe took an entire 3 years to deliver one of his most cinematic sounding albums. Of course, it wasn't released without the push and pull between Atlantic that seems to define his time there. Yes, the animosity was so heavy that it took Anonymous, threatening to raise some serious hell if it wasn't granted a release date. The label did one better and gave him full freedom to make whatever album he wanted to make. From the opening on Mural, which runs close to 9 minutes, but never feels like it ever lags, and song by song it gets more epic. The album is split into 4 parts to portray the different seasons of life. Summer sounds quite blissful despite giving an overall analogy of how good times are beginning to end. Fall dives into bitter dark themes like prison, religion, and drugs. Winter is the most dark aspect, speaking largely on the decay of black ghettos and neighborhoods through songs like Deliver and the 9-minute Chopper. The most memorable piece is that it's so carefully orchestrated that if you play the album backwards, it gives you an entire different feel, vibe, and message, and enhancing its replayability a great deal. So even though most people credit Kendrick Lamar as the first person to pull that off, no, it was Lupe. It also helps that he reunites with many of his best collaborators that were lost on Lasers like Soundtrack and Nicki Jean. In a year that felt as if there were at least 3 amazing hip-hop albums dropping almost every month, Lupe stood out and reclaimed much of the respect that he lost through his series of missteps. I give a high praise to a beautiful, open-ended piece of art. Number 2, The Cool. 2007 and 2008 were undoubtedly the prime years of Lupe in the world of rap, and almost always the place that fans and critics cite as the time where they loved him the most. He had won his first Grammy, toured the world with Kanye West, NERD, and Rihanna, which splintered off into the greatest group that never was in Child Rebel Soldier, being featured on the first ever XXL freshman list, and the first ever BET Hip Hop Awards Cypher, and lastly making MTV's 10 hottest rapper in the game list. Man, all these things used to really matter. The highs were definitely not absent with lows, however. Losing his father to diabetes, losing one of his closest friends stacked bundles to gun violence, and losing his friend, mentor, and business partner Chili to a 44-year prison bid. With all of that turmoil hovering over him, it makes all the sense in the world why The Cool is one of his most serious and dark albums within his catalog, especially when you compare it to his debut. Lupe tells the story of a young hustler trying to get into the drug game. It's presented mostly through songs like The Coolest, Gotta Eat, Hello Goodbye, Streets on Fire, and The Die. still he weaves in his charming, optimistic nature on songs like Go Watch, Go Baby, and Fighters. Amazing storytelling on Intruder Alert and Hip Hop Saved My Life. Shout out to Slim Thug. And giving us flashes of his current career ups and downs with Paris Tokyo, Dumb It Down, and The Superstar. The highs are so great and exemplify everything that we love about Lupe. That imagery in his raps that often gives you a double meaning, chill but hip-hop production that he can float on, and his trait of talking about things that literally no rapper was talking about. Street Fighter, anime, Go-Yard, all things that are common today, but not in 2007. Him raging against the machine was so appreciated by people that felt like they didn't belong in rap. Kids that felt like outcasts and weirdos because they didn't care about trap music. Without a doubt, this album cemented his legacy to hip-hop heads and casual fans of music everywhere. And the #1 Lupe Fiasco album of all time is Food and Liquor. Before I continue, I have to emphasize how difficult it was to make a decision between #2 and #1. The rest of the list was quite matter-of-fact and simple in figuring out almost at first listen or revisit of each album. But these two are super interchangeable depending on your mood and preference. I only lean towards Food and Liquor because it leaves just a little less room for error than The Cool. Not a lot, but a good 1/4%. Coming off of a huge buzz through the Fahrenheit 1st and 15 mixtape series, a Jay-Z co-sign that almost never happened if you were assigned to him, and a show-stealing performance on Kanye West's Touch the Sky, Lupe was anointed as the man to save hip-hop from the terrors of snap music and radio-friendly fodder. His attention was so big that the original version of this album was leaked, and he was forced to record several new songs, getting its name from the food and liquor stores in Chicago to serve as a double entendre for the good and evil in life. The separation between hip-hop records, mainstream cuts, and street tales is so perfectly balanced that it lives up to its title as a grab bag of variety. Some raw-ass deep rap on Just Might Be Okay, Daydreamin', Pressure, and the Emperor soundtrack. Some poppy pop on I Gotcha and Sunshine that doesn't feel like he's trying way too hard. And these hooks. Very underrated in the realm of writing hooks that you can sing and remember almost immediately. Like I spoke about on The Cool, so much respect to Lupe for ushering in a new period of different topics outside of the norm through He Say, She Say, American Terrorists, The Cool, and Kick Push. Like, this man wrote a whole song about skateboarding and literally inspired people to want to get involved in the art. Way before Wayne. Way before Odd Future. That's insane to me. This is the introduction of an optimistic young man ready to experience the good and bad of life, and that mild innocence makes it stand out a great deal. While Lupe definitely has albums that are equal in quality, almost none hone in on all of his strengths and give you just enough to get his point across, but not too much to bore you. And that is why Food and Liquor is Lupe Fiasco's best album. If you liked the video that you watched today, please do not hesitate to give me a like or a subscribe button. If you got anything else that you want me to cover on my beautiful channel, go ahead and give me a message in my DMs. I always answer, and I love talking to you guys. Anyway, I'm Calvin, and I'll see you next time.